Hello, I'm Bubs, I'm an artist, and I like to hear myself talk, and today I'd like to hear myself talk about comics. Specifically my own comic, and the experience that making it so far has been. This past Friday, as of uploading, marks the 50th page of my comic, which means that I've been posting a new page every week for 50 weeks, or, in other words, almost a whole year. Granted, it's really only a drop in the bucket of what I have planned, and I definitely want to start picking up the pace on uploads so that it doesn't take, like, a decade to finish. But regardless, I am genuinely pretty darn proud of how consistent I've been and how hard I've worked on it. While this is not my first time putting together a comic or anything, this is the first time I've actually started to post it under my Bubs brand consistently, and I have been learning a lot of things, good and bad. One thing I try to do with this channel is to encourage people to chase their ambitions, but in a realistic way. I want to make art seem accessible because it really is, but I also don't think it's fair to make things out to be way easier than they actually are. I'm not here to promise all giggles and rainbows when that's not the reality, because that's crueler than telling you there's never any. A lot of people have expressed interest in making their own comics because of seeing how I do mine, which is insanely cool, and a lot of you also seem to be seeking advice from me. While this isn't going to be the most formal advice-giving thing, I thought that since I'm almost at the anniversary of starting this thing, and because I need a little more time to finish some stuff for my next more formal video, I thought I'd just spend some time talking about the experience I've gained from this whole journey, including lessons from before I even started all the way to now. My goal in doing so is to help you understand what you're getting into if you're currently planning a comic project for yourself so that you can get set up for success. Keep in mind, this is my individual experience and you might have a different one. Not all the same stuff is guaranteed to imply. Still, I hope that you can get something out of this. If you want to get a peek behind the curtain on creating an independent comic, or maybe if you just want to hear me talk to fill the void, feel free to stick around and even get out anything you want to work on alongside me. Get some water too, and maybe a snack, whichever you need, and I'll just jump right into the biggest thing you need to understand about comics. Making comics takes an insane amount of work. You might be thinking, yeah, duh, and if you're anything like me, maybe you aren't scared off by a phrase like insane amount of work. Maybe to your detriment, also like me. I commend your attitude, but I'm not using hyperbole here. You would be right in assuming that a lot of the work is the stuff that actually ends up being put in front of the audience, the panels or strips or pages themselves. For me, each page takes me about 4 to 5 hours to complete, starting with a pre-made thumbnail and going all the way to a fully lined, colored, and shaded page. For 50 pages, that's about 200 to 250 hours of work on just the pages alone so far, which isn't too bad considering that it's been spread out so much, but it is a little bad when I realize I have plans for hundreds of pages before this thing is done and I've told the entire story that I want to tell. Those hundreds of hours that I've spent already, though, is a tiny drop in the bucket compared to what I've actually done. The invisible work is the actual hefty part. A lot of people don't think of it when they read a comic because it's not the stuff you see, and it's not as fun, which is fair. But regardless of the complexity of your comic, you are going to be spending hours and hours just planning out what you want to do. Or rather, you should be doing that, otherwise you will have a disorganized mess. Before I started my comic, I spent months developing the story, refining the character designs, tuning the setting, and world building, and once I had all the concepts down, I had to spend time getting used to drawing the characters. I made the decision to create custom brushes for background elements and certain patterns. I picked and refined a color palette. I played around with different fonts for my text. I created rough and then refined plans for the story, broken down by chapter. I had to start creating thumbnails, and pick an upload schedule that was sustainable for me. That's just some of the stuff that was part of the planning, and if I were to quantify it hour by hour like I did for the actual comic pages, I have easily spent additional days or maybe even weeks of total time on all that. The worst part is that I'm still doing that stuff now as I go along, plus working on stuff that promotes the comic, plus continuing to make edits to things as I go along and my ideas adapt and change slightly. It is unlikely that you will be completely done with any of that behind-the-scenes work once you've actually started, no matter how much upfront stuff you do. Combine that idea of the workload with the ongoing commitment aspect, and hopefully you see why I said insane. Comics can get super long, super fast, and it just comes with the territory of the medium. You are communicating things with still images, so motions that might be very quick in an animation might take multiple panels to show. Dialogue in a book that takes 1 out of 30 lines on a page might require 1 out of 5 panels to get across. That is not me trying to argue that comic making is inherently more time-consuming or labor-intensive to create than animation or book making, but I am posing the argument that it gets so much bulkier on the consumer end. I mean, in the 50 pages of story that I've put out so far, all that has happened is that I introduced the main character, her family, the fact that she just moved into a fixer-upper apartment in a new town, and then started her on her first day at her new school where she starts to make friends and investigate a possible ghost sighting. It is terrible that every time I have gone back to read over everything just for fun, the reading goes fast. Well, that's actually not terrible. That's kind of a positive trait of a comic. But my point is, it's not like those 50 pages are really stretched out and filled with padding. I try to do something useful in each page, whether it's teaching you about the characters, the setting, the conflicts, the mysteries, just telling a joke. I'm not dragging my feet with the story or adding in a bunch of clutter, at least not intentionally or to my knowledge. And yet I'm already 50 pages deep. And, as I said earlier, I'm not even close to done. I have important characters to introduce still, A and B plots yet to follow through on, and I even have an epilogue planned way in the future. I want Girl and Ghost to be a long-term project, so I'm alright with this, but my point is really that you should be too. I'm not saying all this to scare you away or make myself look way more dedicated and hardworking, but rather to paint a picture of what you're actually signing up for. Depending on your workflow and your plans for your comic and such, you might end up with less work than I have taken on myself, but that doesn't mean it's gonna be easy. Committing to a comic means committing to a lot of work over a long time, depending on your length of story. And if your goal is to snag readers, it means committing to a lot of consistent work. Work you don't always want to do, which is what brings me to my next little topic. Actually, hey, before I continue, I just wanted to try something a little new and ask you to do the engagement things now instead of waiting till the end, when viewer retention is at its lowest. If you're enjoying hearing me talk so far and would be interested in hearing me talk more in the future, either about comics or other random things, you might consider liking and subscribing. It's completely free for you, but it helps me out a ton. Anyways, this is either going to be embarrassing for no reason, or genuinely helpful. That's up to you. Don't make it the embarrassing thing. Please. Okay, now, art block and burnout. Two sides of the same shitty coin and any artist's worst nightmare. You had better believe that I have faced these little bitches many times in the last year. I like making comics, I like telling stories, I like the little world I built for myself, but some days I have sat down to work on things and I just can't put my stylus to the screen without wanting to commit crimes. Everything I do looks like garbage to me, and my motivation is just bunk. It happens, and with comics, it can set you back a lot, especially if you're going to be squeezing work for your comic into a schedule busy with other work, social events, etc., which you are definitely going to be doing for reasons I will talk about a little later. See, for me, I work off of a schedule, or at the very least, I try to. Since I post on Fridays, all of, if not most of the work should be done before I go to bed the previous night on Thursday, so that I'm not rushing to complete things the morning I am meant to post the new page. That means, ideally, I work on things in smaller sessions throughout the week. Generally, I'll do the line art and the backgrounds in one sitting, and then the colors, shading, text, and effects in another sitting. Trust and believe that for me, each session ends up being about the same length. Line art takes me ages, man. However, I have not kept to this ideal schedule for a while because of many, many reasons, one of which being intense burnout. I kind of downplayed it on my channel, but I genuinely fried my brain a little bit ago because of how much I'd been working on YouTube stuff, and that was the cause of the only time I have missed a weekly upload in the past 50 weeks. It would have been one thing, of course, if I was drawing a doodle or something else low pressure like that, but I wasn't. I was creating a piece of art that consists of a bunch of individual but still related illustrations that I had to fully color, shade, polish, and spell check, all with the intention to post it publicly as a completed work. When I'm already dealing with low motivation, looking at that big pile is not exactly exciting. The other big risk here is that art block and burnout aren't always general. Sometimes you're gonna get art block or get burnt out on the comic and the comic only. That has also happened a couple times over the past year, and it's been a big bummer. It's something that is a really big risk to the whole independent comic operation. Once again, I'm not trying to scare you, but I am trying to convince you to get prepared for these moments, because stuff happens sometimes. Now, no one plans for art block or burnout, obviously, but that doesn't mean you can't defend against them. For art block, my advice is simple there. Just make sure you're always planning ahead of time. I find that art block is most obnoxious when you're trying to start a new creative endeavor, but if you've already done the foundational work of coming up with the ideas and creating a layout and that sort of thing, all done before you start to actually launch and put out the comic, it becomes much easier to work through the art block. I even recommend getting at least 3 updates worth of work done prior to starting your uploads, in addition to all that planning stuff, just to make sure you're actually ahead of the curve all the time and you've got some cushioning there. That's what I did, and it covered my butt enough times that I ran out of the extra stuff. Bottom line, do what you gotta do to get wiggle room prior to when you actually need to put the stuff out. Burnout, however, is kind of a different beast. While art block is an obstacle you can overcome, burnout kind of makes your art feel like it is the obstacle. That's at least the way I tend to look at the major difference. For some reason, I see a lot of people use the terms art block and burnout interchangeably, and while they're definitely related and can happen concurrently, I'm quite certain they have distinct definitions. Either way, in my personal experience, art block can be handled with a sledgehammer, but burnout cannot be. It's way trickier to get around once it's already hit, and it can have a way bigger negative impact on your work. What's worse, art block tends to happen early in the process, while burnout tends to hit as a result of the process, which is unfortunate. Luckily, I have found a few strategies for building up that defense again that I personally find helpful. Firstly, and this is going to be kind of related to the art block stuff, strike while the iron is hot. If you ever find yourself with one of those days where you have a lot of free time and a lot of motivation to do that one task that you don't usually enjoy, then you do that now. If you're like me and are genuinely pleased doing every part besides the line art, but you have a day where you really are in the mood for it, get a good head start on the line art for a few updates worth of content. That way, you are going a little above and beyond while you can physically and mentally handle it, while also taking the pressure off the next couple of updates. It's less stress overall. Also, this is still helpful for you blessed few that never experience burnout or stress somehow. Sometimes, life just gets in the way, and now you're off to the emergency room, or the mechanic, or a friend's place unexpectedly on the night you were supposed to be doing a bunch of work. Taking advantage of those moments of high motivation and extra time is just a good strategy that will keep you on track even when the choo-choo jumps it. Chicago reference. Anyone? Just me? Okay. Secondly, set reasonable expectations for yourself. I am very serious about that. Do not bite off more than you can chew. You are setting yourself up for failure, and that is how you build up frustration, stress, resentment, and yes, burnout. If you have a super busy schedule, don't start off by trying to do massive 30-panel scrolls with super detailed images every single week. It's not going to work. Start small, and when you start getting faster at comics and or you just get more free time to work on things, then you can bump up the amount of work you do every upload. Most importantly here, though, don't overdo it for your first experience making a comic, and I mean this in the content area now. I absolutely understand that it can be appealing to make the most complex, detailed, deep lore-having story and characters right off the bat, but if you've never even made, personal comics before, it's just not gonna turn out the way you want. If it's unreasonable to think someone painting for the first time can perfectly mimic Van Gogh, it is unreasonable to expect you can create the next Invincible straight out of the gate. Take your time and make some shorter projects first so you can get used to the workflow and figure out what is best practice for you before you start bumping up the ambition. You don't even need to put out these practice things if you don't want to, but get that exercise in first. Third and finally, just take care of yourself. Genuinely, your best defense against burnout in general is just taking care of yourself. Easier said than done, obviously, but in my experience, while art block is kind of spontaneous, burnout is something that bubbles up gradually. I've been making art long enough that I can sense when my battery is running low, and hopefully you can too. Take your time, make space for relaxing activities that recharge you instead of making you feel more tired, and listen to your body. If you need a break, you need a break. Take that break. I know that it can be scary to miss out even on one upload when you're trying to self-publish something and you're trying to build a fan base, but trust me, low motivation and resentment for a task shows up in the final work, and that can turn off people just as much as missing an upload, if not more. I feel like most people would be more likely to wait on something that they really enjoy than to show up for something they enjoy when it's way lower quality than normal. It is just much better to delay something so you can put passion into it than to slog through it to get it out on time, both on a personal and professional level. Speaking of people who want to read your comic and fan base, let's talk about that now. While you should be trying to make comics because you enjoy it over everything, there is nothing wrong with hoping other people will like those comics too. Building a fan base is fun and exciting and fulfilling in a lot of ways. However, doing so isn't easy. You might think that's pretty rich coming from me on this channel that blew up really big in a very short amount of time, but it actually really is hard when it comes to comics, and I think having the experience of the YouTube blow up is kind of a good proof of my point. I'll explain what I mean, but first, let's actually go over a few factors of why comics are a unique problem when it comes to capturing an audience. As previously mentioned, comics can take kind of a while to get going in terms of story and, unfortunately, intrigue, so getting someone invested enough to read all the way through what you've already put out and come back again is a unique challenge. There's obviously ways to get audiences to buy in pretty fast, such as utilizing some kind of hook, like in medias res, or as you'd say in English rather than butchered Latin, starting your story in the middle of some kind of action. This is not something I personally did with Girl and Ghost, as I preferred to allow the introduction to be slow, giving you all time to get to know these characters in a natural way. This choice is rooted in the fact that action and drama isn't necessarily super important to the story. There will be moments with it, but most of the time mystery and character interaction is the focus, so letting things be slow with lots of detail is better for me, and it's also not setting up false expectations. That is something important to keep in mind if you do want to use a hook. Don't make promises you can't keep. It would have been silly for me to start with dramatic gun chase / car fight if that's not relevant to anything that ever happens again. I could have, however, started with Sammy seeing Triss for the first time, or, as I did in the beta version of the comic, started with Sammy showing up for her first day of school immediately. Both options have a little more immediate tension and stakes, which could help in catching some attention. An alternative method that I think is viable is, of course, having large updates. Every time you update the comic, including when you launch, there is a lot to chew on. That could potentially be a little overwhelming, too. I'm a person who likes smaller chunks at a time, personally. But still, this is what I do plan to do with Freak Show and other projects that have been tinkered on while By the Blood sinks to development hell. I swear it's not because I'm abandoning those characters or those stories, but it's just because I'm seriously and stupidly considering embarking on an independent game dev journey, as if that's going to be any easier than the epic 7-act 4,000-page comic that it would turn out to be. I don't know why my brain works this way, but it does. Regardless, once again, keep in mind how viable and realistic that is to get done consistently if that works better for you, and consider how that will affect whether people will keep coming back to see more each time. If you need weeks or even months between each update, especially if the interval is not consistent, people might not want to wait around. It doesn't mean that your comic is bad or that these people are mean, it's just unfortunately how this stuff works sometimes. People forget, people lose interest, and that's okay. Another thing to keep in mind is that it's very hard to get started as an artist on pretty much every platform ever on the internet in general, and that includes platforms specific to comics like Tapas or Webtoon. Algorithms like consistent and high-frequency posting. For artists trying to get an online presence started, that can be super difficult because art takes time to make and inspiration, and trying to keep up with the algorithm enough to get put in front of people is not sustainable. It's a one-way ticket to burnout! You can use the life hack of creating fan works to draw in some people, and that definitely has the potential to help you, and it's helped me in some ways. But if you're wanting to capture an audience for original works, having fan work be the main thing you do can backfire. It'll come back to that false advertising kind of thing that I mentioned earlier. This is a little better on websites that are designed around webcomics because they're supposed to be catering to people that are artists and make comics, and taking a little time is taken into account for there. But that doesn't mean the algorithm isn't still competitive or preferential for already popular styles or topics. These websites do best when they push the stuff that gets a lot of clicks. And that's not them being evil, inherently, and the stuff that is most popular right now may not be the stuff you want to make. I can also tell you with experience now, if you've already got a big-ass audience in general, that doesn't mean you're going to get the best carryover to a comic. If I am to assume, most likely inaccurately, that every single person that is subscribed to Girl and Ghost is a subscriber to my YouTube channel, that would mean that I have an audience carryover of about 0.5%. Kind of a yikes if that's something you're going for, especially when you consider a fair amount of those people over there probably found me on Tapas or through real life, so that percentage is actually even smaller. That's not me complaining or being bitter, by the way. I didn't think anyone would care about my comic when I started it, and I was fine with that, and I still don't even know how I blew up over here. So quite frankly, I'm doing fucking phenomenal compared to what I thought I'd be doing right now. Besides, you not caring about my comic doesn't make you, like, a shitty person or a bad supporter. If you just like my YouTube content, that's fine. Maybe you are interested in what I have to offer comic-wise, but that's just not the particular one that you care about, and that's also fine too. It's also probably not helped by the fact I don't really plug it very much, so there's a good chance a lot of y'all would be interested if I made it more obvious that it exists and also where it exists. I should probably be doing that, but regardless, my point is that getting a lot of people interested in your art on one platform is not going to mean that you can get them to go read your comic. The simple fact of the matter is that I am pitching to you something you aren't here for. You're here on a general platform where you can watch a lot of content from a lot of different types of creators, and me and my art-oriented stuff is only one of many, many options. That is why it's so much more viable in order to get my art out there and in front of people. Still, what I'm trying to do now is to get you to go to a different platform that is far more niche in content and also has content in a completely different format to what you're getting here, also asking that you create a new account for that platform so that you can do the engagement things and keep updated, something you might not want to do if you're only there for reading my comic, which is totally fair. Granted, it can be easier or harder to do all that depending on where you're going to be posting things, and you can, of course, cross-post to several platforms at once to make it as accessible as possible, given you have a malleable enough layout for your work. Still, there are downsides to that too. Your layout and format might not carry over the best from platform to platform, you might have to sacrifice possible revenue in order to get eyes on your stuff, there's a higher risk of technical difficulties, and so on. I also must give the warning that generally big audience equals money, but I don't know a single comic artist that is only a comic artist, and this includes people that are pretty much at the top of their game. My comics teacher professed that he didn't really know of any comic artists that made all of their money off of comics. Most people are doing double duties as character designers for shows, or doing panels, or going to artist alleys, that sort of thing. There's also ways to monetize it through merch or donations and that sort of thing. Hell, I'm working on that first part right now, but it's not going to be very likely that you will be only making money from selling your comics or revenue from people viewing your comics. You will most likely have to keep holding onto comics as kind of a side thing with other forms of work inside and outside of the art space, depending upon what you want to do, serving as the vast majority of your income. If you want to factor that all into the workload for your comic too, you can, but that might be kind of depressing, so maybe don't do that. I don't know. It's up to you. If I'm completely 100% honest in instructing you how to capture an audience and maybe try to monetize that, and I hate that I have to say this, your hard work is really only half the recipe. Luck is the other half. I say that as a person who got really lucky. I do work hard on my videos. I will continue to work hard. But the only long-form video I have ever created that has cracked 500,000 views has audio that sounds like this.
Intentional with these differences, and I'm just saying, you should probably be intentional with your monster or fantasy race designs too, past the point of being glad you only need one hand to draw.
Yeah, the video with 2 separate sections yapping about titties that was apparently recorded through a tin can and string didn't blow up because it was just so good. I just so happened to make something interesting enough for YouTube's algorithm to really like, and that randomly put me in front of enough people to make them want to stick around for more. As grateful as I am for that, and as happy as I am to have the platform that I do now, it kind of pisses me off because I cannot for the life of me tell you how to replicate that, and I can't replicate it again myself. Basically, my advice here is going to be a bit of a bummer. If one of the major motivating forces of starting a comic for you is to build a large audience and make a ton of money off of it, you need to not make a comic. You can want an audience. It doesn't make you stupid or childish or self-absorbed to want that. If you're spending a bunch of time making something, of course you want people to tune in and tell you that they love it. But luck is a major factor and you cannot control luck. Luck may never find you, which is why you should just focus on the stuff you can control, and that is putting in the hard work. Just don't waste your energy on that hard work if you don't find that hard work itself fulfilling. Make a comic because you enjoy it. Work hard on it because it makes you feel proud of yourself. Post it frequently and consistently because it gives you small victories. If the act of making isn't enough for you on its own, you're probably not going to be able to hold on long enough to get to that fan base and money-making part anyways. That's kind of what I did, and it's what I did for this channel too, and I'm still doing it now, and personally, I like to believe that comes through in the things I make, and contributes to people enjoying what I make. That I'm enjoying what I make. Let's go ahead and wrap up with some general final thoughts. My experience posting my art to the internet over the last year has not been a standard one by any means. I graduated from college with a science degree, decided to mess around in the summer I was giving myself to mentally recover from how shitty my 2024 had been so far, and now I'm more than halfway to a silver play button on YouTube. That's something some channels, some of which blow me out of the water in terms of quality, work years and years to achieve. Maybe I'm not the best to come to for advice of art stuff anymore, at least as it relates to getting started and getting traction with stuff. Still, I really hope that I did impress upon you one core idea. You can only be successful at comic making if your life is better when you are comic making. Hell, you can only be successful at anything creative if your life is better when you are creating. And no, don't pull up examples of fraudsters cranking out AI slop and that sort of thing. Those people might be successful monetarily right now, but they probably already had a shit ton of money anyways. No one is going to be introducing the things they create to their kids one day. Those people don't get fan art or people sharing that stuff with their friends unless they're hoping to make money off of it too. Successful art connects with people, and the only way to get them to connect is if you put your heart in there to connect to. But again, it's also a thing where if you set up your art in a way where you're going to be stressed out making it all the time and it's not being additive to your life, then you're also probably not going to handle that stress and be consistent and keep coming back for more. So setting things up in a way that will continue to make you happy instead of make you very, very unhappy is also very important. If you really want to make a comic, if you really have a story you want to tell and all the stuff that I've said here sounds like small potatoes to you, then go fucking make that comic, baby! I try really hard to create an environment here on my channel that supports you guys in your artistic endeavors. It's why I give shoutouts to the people behind some of the really cool fan art I get, which I'm not doing today, but still. It's why I've already done and want to continue to do projects that directly include your guys' art. I'd maybe even love to do some kind of review/critique series specifically on comics far in the future if I think of a good way to make that happen. But for now, I'm just going to say that I believe in you. I believe in you because if little old me has managed to make it this far, so can anyone. I do not have riches beyond belief, or unlimited time and energy, or even completely unheard of before ideas. My art is not perfect, and my comic pages are also not perfect. I did not go to a fancy art school. I do not have a blood pact with any eldritch gods, though depending on what I need to offer up there, I might be willing to reconsider. What I do have is an iPad, and internet access and an idea and years of art practice because it's been my main method of escapism. I am writing a comic about a bunch of middle schoolers trying to uncover paranormal mysteries because that's fun for me. That in and of itself is the reward. It is the motivation. It is what keeps me going. Making a comic is hard, and it takes a lot of work, and there's not necessarily a whole lot of returns. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. I've been working through migraines, crying because of stress, feeling demotivated because of life stuff, but no matter what, when I look at the 50 pages I've done so far, I can say that for me, it's been worth it. And it will remain worth it if I stay under 400 subscribers for all eternity. It'll be worth it if all my subscribers are sacrificed to the Eldritch God tomorrow, and then I have only one subscriber. Obviously, that would be the Eldritch God. You get it. I'm going to keep working on it, and I'm going to keep getting better, because practice makes progress. And who knows, maybe in another 50 pages I can come back and talk more about it. But for now, I'm gonna tell you that you can find my comic linked in my description. Or maybe I'll do an iCard thing right now. I don't know if I can do that, but I will if I can. You can read it if you want, but if you don't want, I respect that too. Either way, I appreciate you sticking around for this long to hang out in this video, and I really appreciate everybody that has been reading the comic and saying very nice things about it over there. It's that time again where I say thank you to my wonderful channel members, who you can see on screen now. These guys go above and beyond to support me and my channel, allowing me to invest more time and energy into making cool videos like this one. You can also become a channel member if you have an extra $2 lying around every month. You will join these guys in getting your name at the end of videos, in addition to getting access to some members-only community posts with early looks at thumbnails and art for videos, plus a bunch of cute custom emojis. Next week will probably be the start of some more labor-intensive uploads, and there are a few announcement types of things just waiting around the corner, some of which I've already teased, so maybe keep an eye out. I continue to have big plans for this channel and things I want to do alongside it. Is anyone surprised at this point? I'm gonna let you go now. Thanks again for sticking around this long. Until next time, drink some water, carve out some me time for yourself, and most importantly, remember that you matter. Bye. I'm so itchy. I'm so itchy. It'll be worth it if all of my